Welcome to Novelist Spotlight, the podcast where published fiction writers are interviewed to gather their insights and writing lessons so we can use them to make ourselves better and more effective writers. There are just 3 things I ask of you, if appropriate to you and your experience. Please subscribe, please click on the like button, and please share this program link with any family members, friends, or colleagues who might be interested or benefit from the content. Now, on with our program. In the spotlight is author Amy Clipston. She's an award-winning best-selling author, and this is the first time I've had a Christian author on the program. She sold more than 1 million books. She lives in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina, where I used to live for about 5.5 years. And being a Christian author in Charlotte can be a little bit different. If you've never been to Charlotte, a couple things about Charlotte is the city is immaculate. It's a beautiful city. It's a very well-run city. And in fact, Amy works for the city. Also, it's the home to mega churches. There's some really big churches there. And it's a very religious city. But she's not just a Christian author. I think she's also an inspirational writer. She also writes novels about the Amish people. And she's a member of the American Christian Fiction Writers. She's got a couple of sons. She's got 6 spoiled rotten cats, as she puts it. And we welcome Amy Clipston to the program. Amy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Feeling is mutual. As I said, I've never had a Christian author on before, but in terms of writing books that are Christian themed. Tell us, though, for starters, I said you're a Christian writer, an inspirational writer in Amish. Can you kind of go through that gamut of the stuff that you do write?
Sure. So I got my start writing Amish fiction, and I had read other Amish authors and thought, why don't I give that a try? And my father was a German immigrant, and he always told me that the dialect that the Amish speak are similar to the dialect that his family spoke in Germany. And so I always felt this loose connection to them. I grew up in New Jersey. I remembered visiting the Amish as a child. And so I started researching the Amish, and it was meant to be because doors started opening. A writer friend of mine said, "Oh, I grew up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and my mom lives there, and she has an Amish friend, and you need to go visit my mom." And so I made a very dear Amish friend who I'm still friends with years later, and she answers all of my questions. Nothing is off limits. I go and visit her. She actually helps me with ideas since I'm just about to pitch my 7th Amish series. I'm so excited about that. And I love writing about the Amish because I find their way of living just so fascinating. And I learn something new with every book I write. And although they have a different culture, they live a different way, they have the same problems that we do with strained relationships and dealing with grief and being feeling as though they're alone in this tough world we live in. So that was how I got my first contract, was deciding to write about the Amish. And I'm just so grateful. It's my books have been blessings to me in many different ways. And the friends I've made, whether it's other authors or readers, have just been such a blessing to me.
Now, what's the fascination with the Amish? They live very simple lives. And I believe I was actually going to look this up before we got started and I forgot to, but don't they make a very basic and simple commitment that their lives are really built around a very clean and simple sort of commitment? Does this resonate with you? Do you know what I'm referring to here?
Yes. They call themselves plain, that they're plain. They live plain. And so there is a verse in the Bible that I think is in Romans, and I'm embarrassed that I don't know it, that you should live separately. So they have telephones, but the telephones are not in their home. They're in a barn or in what they call a phone shanty, which is really a shed, because they don't want to hook up to the phone lines because they're separate from the rest of us. So that's why they don't have electricity. And they use horses and buggies to get around town, or they'll pay a driver to take them out of town, or they'll take a bus if they want to go visit somebody, or train, because they believe in staying close to home, close to family. And when they join the church, that's when they're baptized, and that's when they have to live by those rules. Otherwise, they'll be shunned. So the
barns have electricity, is that right? Because they've got the phones there.
No, they have, the old order Amish do not have electricity. My friend lives on a dairy farm, and her husband uses diesel to power the milk machine, the milkers.
Oh.
But no, they don't have electricity unless they work for somebody who isn't Amish. Like, for example, if they work in a hotel or they work in a store that's not Amish owned, then there would be electricity there, but they do not have electricity in their homes or in their barns.
So the only way for your friend to read your books, she's not going to read an ebook. She's not going to get an audio edition of your book. She's going to read the print copy only.
That is correct. She used to actually read the draft of my books years ago, but her life is just too busy now. And I would send her a hard copy, and then she would call me up. And I just have to share this story. She is so sweet and soft-spoken. And she called me one time and she goes, "Now, I don't want to hurt your feelings. This is your book." And I thought, oh no, it's all wrong. She said, "We don't eat mac and cheese after church." And I was like, oh, okay, so what do you eat? And she's like, she's so worried about hurting my feelings because they didn't eat mac and cheese after church. I mean, she's just so sweet. I want to be a better person when I talk to her, because she's just so grateful and thankful and soft-spoken. And yeah.
Well, do they eat a specific thing after church each
they
time?
Do. They
what
do.
Is it?
Let's see. They have lunch meat and bread, and then they'll have peanut butter spread. If you've never had Amish peanut butter spread and you like peanut butter, it is the best thing on the planet. And pretzels, and then they'll have pie for dessert, but they're not allowed to work on Sundays, and that includes cooking. So they eat something that's easy to prepare. So lunch meat and bread and the pies are made the day before. So yeah, it's really interesting. I actually had an editor one time, a line editor, say, "You always have the same meal after they have church. You need to change this up." I said, well, that's actually what they do. They eat the same thing.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
So nothing against mac and cheese, but that's just not what they would eat after church.
Right.
So,
they just have the same meal.
So tell me what it means to be a Christian fiction writer. I mean, how would you define that?
I would say always weaving an inspirational message into my books, even if it's a kind of the undercurrent of the story and not part of the story. I don't think I'm explaining that well, because I have started to branch out into contemporary romance with the same publishers. So my contemporary romance books are not quote unquote inspirational, meaning that I don't quote scriptures. I don't include a lot of God in my stories, but there's always this undercurrent of a message, if that makes sense.
So they're romance novels, but are they still Christian in nature, or are they just kind of clean romance novels?
They're clean and wholesome, but my characters are always family oriented, and they don't. This sounds so silly. They don't do anything evil. They're good people, and they're family oriented,
but not necessarily religious.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a huge genre of romance. Is that why you ventured into romance, or did you feel? I mean, is it that there's this huge audience there, and you obviously have a head of steam from the other books that you've written? I would think there's a very ready and waiting audience for Christian novels as well. There are, I think, a lot of Christians in this country who really seek out stuff that they feel is not going to be offensive to their sensibilities. Would you agree that there's a big and ready audience in the Christian sector?
Yes, there is. Yes, there absolutely is. Very large Christian reading audience.
And then what about, so the move to romance, was it the idea that, hey, this is a very large audience, and the content you're able to write appeals to in addition?
Honestly, it was because I like staying busy. Even though I work a full-time job and I write books, I love being on deadline, and my publisher had offered novella collections for the Amish authors, and those stopped. So I was always writing a full-length Amish book, and then a novella, and then a full-length, and then a novella. And then my publisher made the decision to no longer offer the novella collections. And what those were, they were anthologies, if you will, that would have 3 or 4 authors contribute novella. So for example, an Amish Picnic is a novella collection where 3 other authors and I each wrote a novella, which is 20 to 25,000 words, that centered around Amish folks going on picnics for whatever reason. And so when my publisher stopped offering that, I was only writing 2 books a year. And I told my agent, I'm like, I want to stay busy. I just love to be on deadline. I know I'm a workaholic. If you ask my husband, he would tell you I'm a workaholic. And so my agent said, well, why don't you pitch contemporary romance novels and, see if you could pick that up to stay busy. And we pitched to my publisher, HarperCollins Christian. I'm so grateful that they said yes. And I truly feel writing the contemporary books has made me a better writer, because Amish has become second nature to me. And so having to learn how to write something else was a real challenge. And my first book, wow, the edits were insane. I had to rewrite like most of the book. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to write something a little different to help me grow as a writer. But I'm grateful to continue to write the Amish, because I have readers who will not read anything other than Amish. And I'm glad that they'll still read my books.
Well, so you're talking about novella collections, and do you have a Christmas book coming out? Do you not, that you co-wrote with a couple other people? You each wrote a novella?
Yes.
Maybe not a novella. Maybe it's just you each wrote a section of it or a story for it.
Yes, they are novellas. And actually that is a contemporary romance, On the Way to Christmas, that actually just came out this week. And yes, that is 3 contemporary stories, but it was a one-time novella collection. I don't know that we'll do any others.
Now, how did you originally? Well, you actually started with Amish, which is Christian, but I was going to ask you what inspired you to write Christian themes. I don't know if there's an answer to that question other than what you've already told me about how you got started with the Amish.
It's actually kind of funny. When I always wrote as a hobby, and after college, I accidentally found a local chapter of Romance Writers of America, and I went to a meeting. And I met all these other writers, and that I actually studied journalism in college. I never studied creative writing, and I'm not bragging. I had a lot to learn, and I'm grateful for the writers that took me under their wing. And I thought I wanted to write romance, and I was trying to write romance. And then I signed with an agent, and she said, Amy, I think you belong in the Christian Christian genre, or I'm not saying that correctly, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, I'm born and raised Lutheran, lifelong Christian. And I realized she was right, because I could never write the true romance I could never write a romance that is not wholesome, if you know what I'm getting at.
Right.
I used to
your
joke,
romances would not include sex scenes.
Exactly. I used to joke that I would have to contract out those scenes because I just don't have it in me. I can't write it. And I give a lot of credit to the authors who are able to do that and do that well. But it was funny that I didn't realize I belonged there. So I kind of found it out when my agent said, I think you should write Christian fiction. And I went, you're right, I should. So.
I have to tell you that I just recently had a romance writer on, Anne Gracie from Australia, and I was surprised to hear her say that most of her books don't even include a sex scene, and her favorite writer from years back, I don't remember her name right off the bat, but she said that she would write these romances without so much as a kiss. It was written during the Regency era of romance as well, but. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just not unusual to have a romance novel that doesn't have a sex scene, but I think it sounds like what you do is you try to keep it really wholesome and in sticking with really what your audience expects of you, that they aren't going to get uncomfortable with certain aspects of what you have to write. So you were raised a Christian. You're a devout Christian, I take it. Is writing Christian themes, is it part of your spiritual practice? Is that, do you feel that that's part of how you worship or practice your religion?
Absolutely. I think so. I've been asked by people in the past, what's your ministry? What's your ministry? And I would kind of just be like, I don't know, but I think it is the writing. I think that is definitely part of me. And I try to make it organic to the story, especially with the Amish books.
What kind of relationship does that give you with your readers? I mean, I think you have a newsletter, do you not, that goes out? Do you get a lot of feedback from your audience? And in terms of that ministry, is there back and forth with your audience that plays right into this?
There is. I'll get messages from readers who say that they've found their faith again, or they found hope in my books, and I'm always honored to receive those messages, because I hope that my books will touch the hearts of my readers, and when they take the time to let me know that, it's a real honor.
So could I ask you what your favorite Bible quote is? Is there such a thing as a favorite Bible quote of yours? I'm just curious.
Oh, goodness. If you hadn't asked me that, I would have been able to tell you, but
let me come back to that one, because I do want to ask about your characters in your books. Do you have characters who their faith is challenged along the way, or do you have people who actually convert to Christianity in the course of the novel, or are your characters almost entirely Christian from the beginning, and maybe they have life challenges? There may be kind of a reconnection with God or Jesus Christ. I think some Christians talk about this wilderness experience where people kind of drift away from the church, but they come back, that sort of thing.
Usually it's faith through hard times, and that really comes from my personal experience with my husband going through 2 kidney transplants. And so I think I always go to faith through hard times, when you think that God has forgotten you, but he was there all along.
Interesting. So, and your husband is alive and well now?
Yes.
He is. Okay. And did you provide a kidney yourself?
I did. He received his first kidney from his brother, and it only lasted 4 years. And when he went back on dialysis, he was in really bad shape, and his body had built up antibodies. So his mother didn't even match him anymore. So long story short, I gave through a swap where we matched another couple. So I gave to the wife, and later that day, her husband gave to my husband, and they're both doing very well. But it was a long road to get there. So I know how it feels when your faith is tested.
Yeah, well, it must have been a scary thing for you to give up a kidney. I mean, it's surgery; anything can go wrong. That must have been you say it tested your faith, but it's also just a scary event, is it not?
It was, and it's funny because my mother lives with us, and we had to go to Baltimore. We were at Johns Hopkins, and she was so worried about us the whole time. The fear didn't hit me until I was in I forget, my friend would call it the corral, but I was sitting in the room waiting for the nurses to come and take me. And my cousin and my friend who had come with me had left me. And so I was sitting there alone, getting ready to go into the operation. And I thought, what am I doing? What if I don't make it? What if I don't go home? Like, that was when the fear hit me. Like, it didn't hit me till right up till that moment.
Well, it sounds like you made a good decision going to Johns Hopkins, because you can't get much better than that. So you went to They are the
leaders. They are the leaders in kidney transplant. So yes.
Yeah, there you go. So you use the term ministry. That's the term I was grappling for. In terms of when you're actually doing the writing, is there any effort to channel a higher consciousness, the Holy Spirit, if you will? Have you had the experience of that muse and that muse being something transcendent or some kind of expression of God? Is that an effort you make, or has it been spontaneous in some way at times?
I'll when I'm on deadline, I'll pray. I'll just, during my nightly prayers, I'll say, please give me the inspiration to finish this book. And so it's something kind of that I keep in the back of my mind, that I always pray for inspiration.
Church participation, as you probably know, in this country, and not only this country, but a lot of countries, has plummeted. There's far fewer people going to church. I don't know that means a shrinking readership for your novels over time, but obviously this is a process that unfolds over time. What do you think is going on? I mean, do you, when you look at our country, or you look at the Western Hemisphere, democracies, developed democracies, our allies in Europe and so on, or even beyond that, do you sense a form of spiritual deprivation? Do you feel like that churches aren't meeting the demands of people in terms of what they need right now? What do you think is going on? I realize I'm asking for speculation, but you might have some strong feelings about this.
I don't know. I mean, I grew up where my parents and I went to church on Sunday. And then as I got older, my dad stopped going for whatever reason. I mean, he was always a Christian, and my mom and I would always go together. So I think this is my personal opinion, if you haven't grown up in a family that goes to church, then maybe folks, maybe not as many people have grown up going to church as we did in decades ago. And so they just don't know about it. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, it would be easy to blame it on technology, but I don't think that's the whole problem.
It certainly distracts people. I mean, you can immerse yourself in technology. What I see a lot of times is our parents who were religious and took their children to church, but they get to a point where, they turn 18, they turn 21, whatever, and they decide, I don't really want to go to church. It doesn't do for me what it did or does for my parents. I don't know if you observe that or not, but again, you live in a city, and again, I know from living there that it would not be uncommon for a newcomer to Charlotte to be asked by a coworker or a friend, have you picked a church yet? Correct?
Correct.
I mean, you grew up there, so I mean, it's a little bit different because you were always connected, but you probably were asked along the way, where do you go to church, or where do you church, or however they phrase it.
Yes. Yeah. I think we've been here 16 years. So, but I think that I was probably asked that at some point. That's valid.
Because there is that expectation that people go to church, but if you're in Charlotte, if you're in the South, probably is pretty much it. You're Christian and you've selected a church. Does any of that stuff come into play in your books, where they're obviously challenged, but do you go along the lines of anything having to do with different sects of Christianity, such as you're Lutheran, but of course there's Catholics and there's Episcopalians and so on and so forth?
No, with my contemporary romance, I really don't just mention church in passing. My young adult books that I wrote 3 contemporary young adult books several years ago. And I would just mention a community church because I didn't really want to go there, if you will. I just wanted to mention that the characters go to church and didn't want to name it because I never want to offend a reader or have a reader judge. And I remember somebody wrote in a review, and it really irritated me. She said, they all go to the same church. And I thought, no, I just named it community church to kind of keep it,
you want to keep it generic. Yeah. So nobody feels that you're segregating
exactly
different Although I could see you writing something where maybe people kind of come together, even though they're from different. That would be a situation where there's maybe some kind of tension, and then they realize we're really not all that different at all. It's just, we believe in basically the same things and so on. But that's not what you do. How many books have you written now, Amy? It sounds like you've written a lot. I haven't counted them all.
So I actually counted the other day because somebody asked me, and I'm sure you know that books are due a year before they release. So I'm actually working on number 57.
Wow.
But I don't have 57 currently available because that's counting two that haven't released.
You are a workaholic.
Yeah, I am. But in my defense, my husband's a mechanic and he works. He does auto body repair for a living and then comes home and then goes out in his garage. So I'm writing books while he's in the garage. So it's not that we're ignoring each other. We're just both very busy.
Well, you have a mom there, you have a husband, you have children, you have 6 cats that you spoil.
Yes.
What is when do you have time to write? How do you work? Plus you have a full-time job. So how do you work your writing into that? Not only a busy schedule, but you have a lot of people and animals that expect some attention and some care.
Well, I have to give my mother credit, and she's in the next room, so she could probably hear me. My mother keeps the house running. She makes sure that, dinner is made and the laundry is done. And so that I can work 2 jobs. When I'm on deadline, I just push myself till I get the draft done. So I might spend all weekend working, write at night. Now that I'm getting older, I can't write as late at night and then function the next day as I could maybe 10 years ago. But I'm very organized. I outline my books before I write them, and then I just push myself to get that draft done. And when I'm not on deadline, I do enjoy life. I do fun things with the family. My kids are older, so they don't really want to be with me that much anymore. But I watch a lot of movies. I listen to audiobooks, spend time with my husband and my mom. So, but I just work really hard to make those deadlines, and then I relax.
So are you a writer who writes pretty much daily? I mean, do you always have some kind of writing project going, and then you accelerate when you know you're on deadline, when it's time to really put the hammer down? What can you give us a little bit more insight into kind of the ebb and flow of your writing?
Well,
your writing schedule.
Oh, okay. So I really write for deadlines. So like I have a book that's due November 1st, and I actually finished it over a month ago. So I would have time for 2 friends and my mom to proofread it. And now I'm working on the book that is due January 1st. Mostly because my husband and I are taking a vacation together over Thanksgiving because I have a milestone birthday coming up that week. So we're going away. But an
early happy birthday to you.
Thank you. I try to stay very much on schedule, but sometimes, especially during the work week, sometimes I'm just too tired to write at night. So, I'll write Friday night and then all day Saturday and all day Sunday just to get as many words done as I can before the daily grind starts again on Monday. So I don't necessarily write every day. I do set like mini deadlines, like, this weekend I'd like to, get to, I don't know, 20,000 words or whatever. And I'm not saying I write 20,000 words in a weekend. I'm just saying that, I'll set a little deadline or a little milestone and try to get that done. But some days I am just too tired to write after going to the office. We are in the office 2 days a week, my team. So the days that I'm in the office, I'm up really early to try to beat the horrible traffic. But the days that I'm not in the office and I don't have the commute, I can get to my writing earlier. So that makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, believe it or not, people, Charlotte, North Carolina does have some bad commutes. Traffic backs up. And I remember I drive down Providence Road to downtown, and it took a good long time to get down Providence Road, Amy. So I'm sure it's only gotten worse since then. Because when I go back to visit, I have a brother who still lives there, and when I go back to visit, I'm amazed at how much construction has gone on and how that. I mean, the city has just exploded. It's a banking center. It's the number 2 banking center in the United States behind New York City, which I don't think many people know that Bank of America is headquartered there, along with, well, there's a big Wells Fargo presence as well. It's economically a powerful city. So 50 plus books, 57 books. Actually, let me stick with your writing schedule just a little bit longer. Most people I talk to, they're morning writers or kind of midday, like more like lunchtime writers. Not so much in the evening. What do you find? Is it strictly an opportunity that you have in the evening? And I understand that, yeah, sure, you get tired. You say you're getting older now. You don't have as much energy in the evening for that, and you have a full-time job. But if you had an absolutely clear schedule, like you were retired from the city, would you choose to write in the evening? Do you find that that's your most creative time, or is that just the opportunity that you have available?
I think that's the opportunity, because on like a Friday night, I might stay up till like 11, woohoo. But I might stay up really late until I can't see straight anymore. And then I'll sleep in the next morning and drag myself out of bed around 9ish and then get back to work. So I think it's more about the opportunity than the time of day.
So if you had your schedule was your own, would you be a morning writer or a midday writer, or do you see yourself as maybe parsing it out, maybe an hour or two, a few different times during the day?
I think maybe parsing it out. I'll get up in the morning and write for a while, and then maybe get up and walk around, maybe exercise a little bit, and then get back to it, and then just keep writing until I either can't see straight or can't think straight or just run out of steam.
What is your best-selling novel?
I think I haven't gotten numbers lately, but my first book, A Gift of Grace, the last time I checked, that had the highest units sold. And I don't know if that's because it's my first book, it came out in 2009, or if because of ebook deals or why, but I think that is my best-selling book.
What do you think your hottest book has been in terms of, because I bet you've written something where, wow, it sold fast, that maybe not the biggest numbers, but people were really scooping up the book. Is there one that kind of stood out as got off to a really hot start, even if it doesn't have the numbers of the first one?
I honestly don't know the answer. I think traditionally the first book in a series has always done the best. I think that's just how sales work, but I couldn't tell you which one sold the fastest. I honestly don't know.
I get that. Tell me what the novel that you're most proud of. Is there one that stands out that either you're most proud of or you enjoyed writing the most?
That actually is a book that is coming out on January 3rd. It is my 4th contemporary romance, and it's called Something Old, Something New. And I had the toughest time getting those characters out of my head. I am the most proud of that book. I think it has the best emotion in it, because I'm always striving for more emotion with every book. And I love the story. I love the characters. I love the setting. But it's called Something Old, Something New, and it comes out January 3rd.
So you were saying you can't have the toughest time getting the characters out of your head. Is that because you felt such a kinship with those characters? You were so close to the characters and connected? I
think so. I think that's why. Their story was still playing in my head, and I had to go on to another book. And I'm like, all right, you guys need to leave. I need to concentrate on the next story.
That sounds like a great thing. I mean, are these characters who could, do you ever bring characters back?
I wasn't, when I pitched my ideas for my contemporary books, the sales team said that they wanted standalones. But then they asked if for my next 3 contemporary romance that I have a contract for, they asked me to connect them somehow So the name of the town in Something Old, Something New is called Flowering Grove, North Carolina, which actually in my head, I see a small town called Oakboro that my husband and I will go there for car shows. And so when they asked me to connect the books, I said, well, the next 3 books can take place in Flowering Grove. So Christine and Brent, who are the characters in Something Old, Something New, make a tiny little appearance in the book I'm turning in November 1st. So I don't think I'll be able to write another story with these characters, but they might, quote unquote, walk through my next books.
Interesting. So your husband does body work. You're in North Carolina, Charlotte, home to the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Are you and your husband NASCAR fans?
We actually used to be big time NASCAR fans, and you're going to laugh. That's actually why we moved here. But yes, we used to have a camper. We used to go to races. When we lived in Virginia Beach, we would go to Dover and Richmond. And
oh, wow. So you would follow the race? I mean,
yeah.
Now you have a racetrack right there in Charlotte that you can go, Charlotte Motor Speedway, but you would actually, it's almost like the Deadheads who would follow the Grateful Dead around and see them, 100 times in their life. So you would follow you were on the circuit. Wow. So you were definitely diehard fans.
Yes. And ironically, our oldest son wasn't interested. We would take him to races and he would want to go to the souvenir trailers, and then he was done. He wanted to leave. So we stopped going, we stopped buying tickets. Now he's 21 and it's kind of hilarious. He's now a mechanic and he likes NASCAR. So like it's come full circle, but we don't go to races anymore and we don't watch races anymore, but we were diehard fans for a long time.
So did you just get your fill of it and kind of burn out on it, and now you're on to other things? Is that why you kind of fell out of the NASCAR? So, well, you were raising a family and all that, I would imagine, but you took your family with you. So did you just get your fill of it and it was time to move on to Grand Prix instead or something else?
I think that was part of it. And that since our son wasn't interested, we didn't want to go and leave him home. And so then we just kind of moved on. So
even the local races, when the Charlotte Motor Speedways got there, what do they call the race that comes around every year in Charlotte?
Coca-Cola 600.
Yeah. So you don't even attend that now?
We don't. And I've told my husband, if you want to go, there's different leagues and they have the trucks or the minor league, if you will, of NASCAR. I'm like, if you ever want to get tickets for the truck race, because I don't know that I could sit through the 600 because it's hours and hours and hours, but the shorter races we should go sometime. And he's like, yeah, we should. And we just haven't done it. So, but I would go again. I'm not sure who I would root for anymore, but so
who was it Dale Earnhardt that you?
Dale Jr., but yeah, Kevin Harvick is still racing. So I'd root for Kevin.
How about Richard Petty? Was he ever a favorite of yours?
He was of my husband. I came to it later. When if you want to hear the whole story, when I found out that we were going to have a boy, in 2001, I said, why don't we do his room in NASCAR? And so that's how it all started when our son was born in 2001. And the first race I watched was actually when Dale Sr. passed away.
Oh,
so
wow.
Yeah, that was the first race. And I took one look at Dale Jr. and I was like, oh, hey, he's my driver. So
have you had any race car drivers in your novels?
I wrote one NASCAR romance that I sold. Now
really?
you're getting all my secrets.
Yeah, well, when you know that much about, because obviously you must know an awful lot about NASCAR. So when you know about something that deeply, and I can see that a race car driver would be a compelling character. And
Right.
Also it's death defying. It's a risky, I know that they build a lot of great safety equipment into vehicles these days and all that, but it's still risky. Yeah, you are putting your life on the line each time you go out there racing. So it's I can see to where it could make for a compelling character. Does your husband have hot cars? like hot rods? Does he have a Dodge Viper out there that he takes out for a drive once in a while?
Both my sons are and my husband are into older cars. So he has a, let's see, 73 Mustang, 63 Galaxy, 64 Galaxy that is not running. And then my younger son has a Plymouth that Fury, I think, that he's putting together. My older son is into Dodges. He has a Dodge Dart and then other Dodge Darts, other cars and pieces. We're those people, if you know what I mean. We have a fence because there's lots of cars and parts in our backyard.
Yes.
And it's very ironic when I met my husband because his parents' house was the hangout house and I met him through friends. Well, our house is the hangout house for our sons because my husband has this detached garage with a lift and lots of tools. And it's really fun how history repeats itself. But yeah, there's always a lot of motorheads around my house.
What is your biggest challenge as a writer? It doesn't sound like you have a lot of them because, or maybe even a significant one, because you produce a lot of books, a lot of copy. But if you were to say the biggest challenge that you maybe struggle with, or that is the biggest impediment to your operating at a higher level or more productive level, what would you say?
Not necessarily for a more productive level, but I find kind of the other side of writing is the marketing. And that is a challenge. And I actually have somebody who helps me with marketing because, we're supposed to be on social media and posting and, getting interest in our books and promoting. And so I have somebody who helps me and I do a social media plan a month ahead of time. And then he schedules my post because, that's the other job that we're supposed to do as well as write the best book we can write. And the promotion can be a real time.
It's a time. Yes, it's exactly. A time suck. It will do that.
It is. So I definitely always need help with that. So I can concentrate on the writing and not, what am I going to post today? And, there's this ebook deal that I need to post about and tell all my followers about. So I think that is always a challenge. And social media is fun. I mean, I've connected with so many readers and I love when they reach out to me and they comment on my posts and ask questions, but it also is a distraction that can take away. So I try to get on, Facebook at least once a day and answer comments and all that, and then get back to writing, when I'm not in the office.
Yes. Yeah. So are all your books going forward, at least at this stage, going to be, you're a romance writer now? Is that going to be the channel for you for the time being?
I'm also going to continue to write Amish fiction for as long as my publisher wants me to, because I love writing about the Amish and I'm grateful. I'm about to pitch my 7th series, so fingers crossed. But my
how big an audience is there for Amish novels, though? I mean, I would think, is that just sort of an area that a lot of people are fascinated by, so they want to read about the Amish?
Oh, yes, it's huge. It's a whole subgenre now. It has become a whole subgenre. So it's very popular. And there are some Amish readers who will only read Amish books because that's what they love. So I definitely want to continue writing Amish books and then also write contemporary romance as well.
I had no idea that it had its own subgenre like that. It's such a small. I mean, how many Amish are there in the United States? Do you have any idea what that number is?
Oh, I wish I knew. There's quite a lot of them, and I think that their numbers are growing. Only about 10% leave and don't stay in the community. So they're branching out to Ohio has the largest community. Most people think it's Pennsylvania, but it's Ohio, but they've moved out to Colorado and Kentucky. And so their population is actually growing.
Now, why do you think that is? Because as I was saying earlier, church participation is declining pretty precipitously. But here you're talking about the Amish, which is a very foreign sort of lifestyle to most Americans. Why do you think, what do you think the attraction is there for for Americans?
Well, I think that if you're born Amish, and that's all you know, that's why they stay, because
are you saying they're growing because they are actually procreating? It's not because people are okay, I
right.
get you.
Sorry. So I think very few people convert because that it's such a different lifestyle. And I, for example, not want to give up music and movies and my laptop. But for the Amish themselves, it's very difficult to leave because that's their support system.
Yes.
And excuse me, my Amish friend said that she went out on her own and tried to make it on her own before she joined the church. And she said it's very difficult because she had siblings who had left. So she wanted to make sure that before she joined the church, that this was truly what she wanted. And so,
did you see that reality TV show about, I think it was called Going Amish or Breaking Amish?
Breaking Amish. Yeah, I think
Breaking
that is
Amish.
sensationalized. It's not really like that. With the young folks.
It did seem, it did seem, well, they call these shows reality TV, but then you watch them and you think that doesn't seem entirely authentic.
Right. Yeah, it's not.
But it just showed that there is interest around it. It's anytime people live a different kind of lifestyle, I think people are fascinated by, what's it all about. So interesting. So the birth rate in the United States is declining, but the Amish are still very much family oriented. They still have children. They're growing because they're procreating. So, which is the opposite trend that we see in most Western democracies or just developed nations. Well, even in China, the birth rate is plummeting. It's their population is actually going to start shrinking a lot. There's just a lot of that going on. People not being as attracted to having children these days. I think people are getting more selfish, or they fall into that thought pattern of who would want to bring a child into this kind of world, which is really a negative attitude about things. But you don't have that attitude, obviously, Amy, because how many children do you have?
I have two sons. They're 17 and 21.
I want to get back to that Bible quote. Let's not even frame it your favorite Bible quote. Is there a Bible quote though that maybe in your daily comings and goings that you recite, that's kind of an incantation that you repeat to yourself at times? Is there a Bible quote of that sort for you? Or maybe you do have a favorite Bible quote. I don't know. Any of those would do.
Actually, yes, there is. I do have a favorite, and I included it in my first book, A Gift of Grace. The matriarch of the family is Elizabeth Kaufman, and her favorite Bible quote was Romans 12:12. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. And that quote has always spoken to me, because I mentioned what we've been through with my husband's kidney transplants, and his second transplant was the hardest because he was on dialysis for, I think it was 3 years, and he was so ill. And dialysis is very, very difficult. It's difficult on the patient. It's difficult on the family. And, even during that hard time, we still felt God's love, and the people who were praying for us, the people who came forward to be tested for him as a possible donor, and just the way the community just embraced us and helped us. And so that's why Romans 12:12 just means so much to me. And, was Elizabeth Kaufman's signature that I included in, I believe, all of my Kaufman Amish Bakery series.
Interesting. So, what else should people know about Amy Clipston? What else can you tell the audience about either who you are or what your writing represents? If they've never read your stuff and they go wading into that big backlog of books that you have waiting for them, what can they expect, or what should they know?
I always try to write wholesome books that about characters going through hard times, and finding love along the way, learning about themselves along the way, finding courage along the way. And I do my best to infuse a lot of emotion into my books. Like, my goal is to always just keep that emotion coming. And I feel that my books are relatable, because we've all been through tough times. Whether you're a Christian or you're not a Christian, we all know what it feels like to feel alone, or dealing with a strained relationship, or feeling estranged from your family or your community. And so I try to write books that will touch my readers' hearts and hopefully lift them up in some way.
Well, you've obviously succeeded in that, because you're very productive and you've sold more than 1 million books. And I don't remember whether you said the actual name, but I'm looking at your bio right now, and you said that through the Chesapeake romance writers that you learned how to plot, write, and edit a novel. So that was a big contribution to your, because you said you never studied creative writing, but you learned about it through, was that the main group, or was that just the romance, kind of the romance experience that you got in terms of writing romances, or was that something that also played in the Amish novels, into the your Christian inspirational novels?
Chesapeake Romance Writers is a local chapter of Romance Writers of America, and they have local chapters throughout the US and maybe even abroad. And so when I joined, there were just some very generous authors who took me under their wing and read my first, what I was working on as my first book. And so that was where I really learned how to plot a story. And Romance Writers of America has just so many resources, online classes, and you can sign up to have a mentor. And so that was really how I learned how to write a book, because even in elementary school, I would carry notebooks around and fill them with silly stories. I didn't know what I was doing. So I feel like I was born with writing in my DNA. Even though I thought I wanted to be a reporter, I never thought I would want to write books for a living. But so that was really how I learned how to write. And then when I signed with my first agent, I was trying to break into romance. And then she led me. She said, I think you need to write Christian fiction. You need to check out Amish fiction. And so I started studying Amish fiction. And that's how I got my first contract.
Wow. Well, how fortuitous was that? Amy, I know that you're struggling with a cold. I really appreciate how you've been a trooper and taking the time to come on the program. Thank you very much. It's been great having you.
Thank you so much.